Presenting Where Are Photographs from the Department of Art, please let's give a warm welcome to John Opera.
Yay! Hi, hello. How's it going? My name is John Opera. I teach here in CFA across the hall in the art department. And my research basically focuses on elemental questions and conditions that have always been present in photography. And I'm really interested in how those conditions relate to the ways humans fundamentally perceive the world. Okay, so more on that soon. Earlier this month, I'm sure everyone is aware, the UN published a climate report stating what we basically already know, that the Earth is in trouble, right? Or at least humans' presence on the Earth is in question. And this is basically not a surprise, right? People working in the sciences have been telling us this for years. Humans are, as the report stated, unequivocally to blame. And so the question is, why can't we wrap ourselves around this problem, or our heads around this problem, at least in order to act appropriately in terms of solving it? People working in the sciences, in the sciences, they've been warning us about this, right? Humans are to blame. In the social sciences, so things like sociology, anthropology, philosophy, I'll throw art in there, why not? There are also scholars who are trying to understand this, and it seems the problem may have to do with how we fundamentally perceive our relation to the world, and also how we perceive nature, or really how we define nature. So here's a quote from one of my favorite artists, Hans Hakka. And he says, "In talking about nature, we most often think only in terms of trees, the blue sky, etc., and not of the underlying forces and patterns of organization. Neither do we immediately realize that these same conditions are the basis of all technological achievements. An airplane is subject to the same aerodynamic laws as the seagull, so we seem to be so accustomed to looking at the gestalt, which is the overall impression, of natural phenomenon, interpreting it in a heartwarming, romantic manner, that we neglect to perceive the physical laws forming the gestalt." So I think the key here is perhaps the romantic manner. And I admittedly use a lot of romantic kind of tendencies in my own work, so I'm not excluding myself from this. But the fact is, as humans, we often separate ourselves from the world around us. We can't help it. You know, we think we're here in nature, well, that's down the road past the parking lot in that area, you know, in the woods. But basically, we are here. We are nature. Nature surrounds us. We're in the middle of it right now. And so we're not just observing the world, but we're inside of it, acting and reacting to it. The term used to describe this problematic kind of situation is called anthropocentrism. It refers to the fact that humans see themselves as somehow separate from the rest of the world. And it also points to this problem of only fixing the climate when we see fit. Okay. Here's a nice visual. This is Penelope Umbreco, a photographic piece, 541,795 suns from sunsets from Flickr. And these are just 154 of the 500,000 that she captured. And what does this work say? Well, for Umbreco, it's about the collective practice of sharing something you cannot claim authorship over, but maybe you feel like you can. So the question is, who owns the sunset? Umbreco said, "I thought it peculiar that the sun, the quintessential giver of life and warmth, constant in our lives, symbol of enlightenment, spirituality, eternity, all things unreachable and ephemeral, so ubiquitously photographed, is now subsumed to the internet. This warm singular object made multiple in the electronic space of the web is viewed within the cool light of the screen." So basically, she's saying that we're replacing the light of the sun for the light emitted by our monitors. All right, so our relationship to cameras has changed over time pretty dramatically. And originally, camera obscuras were used as drawing devices. Here's a An example, and camera means room in Italian. At first, we would literally stand inside of them, inside the phenomenon, experiencing it firsthand. And now we hold cameras in our hands, and as a result, we've lost a sense of that core condition. We've really separated ourselves from its inner workings. And this is from 1646. In fact, I would say the origin of cameras is more about non-human phenomena than human design. There is very strong evidence that cameras were a part of early Paleolithic people's conception of the world. And so when you have an enclosed space in any kind of tiny hole or aperture, a camera projection can occur. So cameras are not just designed and manufactured, cameras happen. Cameras happen. And here's, I guess the question is, where are photographs? Here's an interesting example. This is the eclipse from 2017, taken right here on campus, that image on the right. And the image was formed by the overlapping trees or leaves in the trees above, and the small apertures that occur in the tiny spaces between the foliage. An image of the eclipse is transmitted through those tiny openings. So what you see is not just sunlight, but multiple images of the sun projected through the leaves. And this phenomenon was famously described by Aristotle. So let's talk light sensitivity, okay? The French scientist Nicephore Niepce, who made the very first photograph, described it as light acting chemically upon bodies. And we think of that aspect of a photograph as highly engineered, and it certainly is, but these elements of photography were first observed and then duplicated, or maybe we can say organized. I like to tell students that I see photography as really a collection of phenomena harnessed and organized into what we kind of call photography today. So on the right, we have a large wall work by the artist Sam Falls. And Falls makes his work in a large outdoor studio in LA by placing car tires and other objects on top of dyed canvas, allowing the sun to bleach the parts that are exposed. And on the left is a photograph that a friend of mine sent me while packing up her apartment during a move, and it's a corkboard that she used to hang her earrings on. The same thing is happening here, light acting chemically upon bodies. So, which brings me to my own research. These are pokeberries on the left. They show up sometime in mid to late September. So pretty soon you'll see them around. Don't eat them, they're poisonous. And I harvest them to make a rudimentary print emulsion that's light sensitive enough to make a photographic print. And on the right, you see some of the paper coated in my studio. So this way of preparing light-sensitive paper was invented shortly after photography was, around 1842. All right. Here's a view of the greenhouse here at UB. So I've been experimenting with this process for about 10 years, and I do use a regular camera to make the images or the negatives, but the prints are made using a variety of plant materials. So not just pokeberries, but blueberries, beets, and other kinds of materials. And since beginning the project, I've come to discover an interesting condition of their properties. The prints eventually fade in a matter of years, and some have completely disappeared. For me, this isn't really a problem, but I think it's kind of a cool conceptual, an interesting conceptual layer that adds to the work. And the subjects of these photos are basically my students. In printing these images, which I'm doing now in the greenhouse here at UB, takes about 2 months of continuous exposure to sunlight during the height of summer. So a friend of mine describes this as nature recording nature. And my intent with these images is to represent a kind of system, in this case art students today. So just as the subjects themselves symbolize transformation from childhood to adulthood, the newer photographs point to a similar kind of renewal and death. And my hope is that over time, the body of work illustrates itself as a document of my teaching, but also a work that kind of is about both recording and erasure. My last sentence here, sorry. So when I make these portraits of my students, I am able to open a door, I think, introducing them to the kinds of ideas I've presented to you today. And my goal is basically twofold: to get students thinking about photography in a more deeper kind of way, but also to open up conversations with them about what it means to be in the world. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, John.